Hi everyone, Eve Daniels again, the Nerdy Nanny, kids book author. I wanted to take a couple of moments to talk to you guys about something that's kind of important. So we're just going to get into it. Stop moving. Okay. Intro, attempt number 2. All right. Hi everyone, Eve Daniels, the Nerdy Nanny. I'm a kids book author. You guys should know this by now. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little more about something that's kind of important that's been going on in the news. I know I've already talked about it before, and you'll probably get sick of me talking about it. Jeffnogies. I wanted to talk for a moment about 3 different things, actually. I wanted to talk about being an ally. I wanted to talk about diversifying your feed, and I wanted to talk about using your platform. For those who somehow failed to notice, there's a lot going on in our country right now. And there are people who are suffering and struggling. There are countless people who have stories that don't make the media. There are only a few that we know about, and so much of our country's population gets marginalized and pushed to the side on a regular basis that for some people it can be hard to know when and where to speak up. And the answer is always. Shout out to Tamara Woods for finally giving the AuthorTube community the kick in the pants that it seemed to need to actually speak up. But yes, in case you haven't noticed, Black lives do matter. They've always mattered. And it shouldn't have taken something as horrific as a man being murdered by the police in broad daylight for that to have been a common concept. But apparently that's what was needed. So I do recognize that it can be awkward to try and figure out when and how is an appropriate time or way to express yourself. And a lot of times people worry about saying the wrong thing or misrepresenting themselves or the fact or the movement, and so instead they stay silent because they're afraid that saying the wrong thing is somehow worse. Your support, even if you don't get it right, is always more valuable than your silence, because your silence speaks louder. The complicitness of entire populations of people to let things like this continue, that speaks loudly. So if you're asking yourself whether or not you should say something, if you had to ask the question, you should say something. Speak up, let your voice be heard, and let people know where you stand. Let people know that Black lives do matter and that you will not tolerate any BS about all lives matter or just some cops. No. I know it's going to be awkward. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. I know there are people in your offices or schools or sometimes even your families that will disagree with you. But you remaining silent just lets that go on. Don't be silent. The other thing I wanted to touch on is something that I actually talked about already last week about diversifying your feeds. Now, some of my friends have had some issues with this. Why should we just be supporting African American content creators, or why should we just be looking for, it's like, no, you shouldn't just be looking for African American content creators, but the algorithms that are set up on YouTube and our social media feeds use demographic information to make recommendations. If you're clicking on Caucasian and white content creators, you will be recommended Caucasian and white content creators. That's just how the algorithms work. If you start clicking outside of your previous color choices, you will notice an immediate impact in the videos that are then recommended to you. Start clicking on people that you may have never heard of before, and you'll find that you have reset the algorithm. This is something that I think that most people should do a couple times a year anyways, just because otherwise you get recommended the same 6 videos by the same 4 content creators. It used to be that when you flipped channels on TV, you flipped through a new show, watched it for a few minutes, and then decided if you liked it or not. Because so much of our content is streamed these days, you are ingesting recommended content. And if you are continuously clicking in the same habits, you will be continually recommended things that follow the same demographic ideals. Clicking outside of that effectively changes the channel. It lets YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of them know that you're interested in all kinds of things, and you'll start getting recommendations based on that. To help reset that, I would like to recommend some of my favorite content creators of color. We have Marquez Brown, who does mostly tech stuff. I like his reviews of things. They're very informative. Neil deGrasse Tyson, obviously. I'm a nerd. Sorry if you didn't notice. We also have Mae Jemison, who was one of the first female astronauts ever and the first female astronaut of color. She does stuff more on, it used to be Twitter and Instagram, but I have seen more interviews with her cropping up here and there. Ron Finley actually has a master class going right now that I am saving up for. If you don't know who he is the gangster gardener of LA. Very cool. I've been listening to a lot of music by Kanan. In the AuthorTube community, we have Austin Kay, Lizelle Samberry, Tamara Wood. I know there are a lot of booktubers that deserve your attention. I'm not super into BookTube. India Hill Brown, Akila, obviously, and Nakia and Smiles. Nakia Reads and Smiles. I forget the exact name of her channel. I will link it down below. But I can say that if you search in the YouTube bar Being Black on YouTube, you will be recommended a number of different videos. You can also go on the Reflecting on the Color of My Skin on YouTube, and you will get a plethora of different content creators in different genres. Some of this that we're trying to override is algorithm based. Some of it's a lot less benign, though, and I do want people to be aware of that. A lot of these things are passive. They're systems that are set up in place that aren't necessarily meant to undermine groups, but do, and they should be combated. But there's also a lot of intentionalism involved. YouTube, for example, during Black History Month, on Twitter, they tweet out different content creators to promote a lot of different things and get people interested in new channels. And they tweeted overwhelmingly white content creators during Black History Month. The same sort of system holds true when you're looking for book recommendations, because people in the book industry and the editors and the proofreaders and all of that have been for so long predominantly white, that if you look through the top YA books, for example, or top hits list, you will be recommended books that are overwhelmingly by white authors. And it's something that we all need to take an active step to combat, because even though they're not necessarily intentional systems, that doesn't make them okay. So one of the things I'm doing this month, actually, and I'll be interested to see who catches it, because, quick recap, I have a website, thenerdydanny.com. I do a lot of educational stuff there. Almost no one that reads the website knows that the YouTube channel exists. So I'm just going to tell you guys, and then don't tell them. But my reading recommendations list last year for summer reading was predominantly white authors, and it wasn't intentional, but it was when I thought back to the books that I was exposed to. I got a lot of white protagonists, a lot of white characters. I don't think I had more than 2 or 3 books on that list that included people of color, which is completely ridiculous. One of the things that I did was this year I flipped the script. as an experiment, I reached out to a couple of other AuthorTubers for their recommendations specifically, but I did go through multiple lists online. And one of the things that I noted was when I found lists of top middle grade books or top YA books by or for people of color, almost none of them showed up on the regular lists. Like, there was a list that had 95 middle grade recommendations, and 2 of them were people of color. Light-skinned people of color at that. And that just shouldn't be the case. So this year, I've flipped the script, and my reading recommendations list is all by authors of color or about main characters of color, and I'll be interested to know, because I haven't included cover art of any of the books, I never do because copyright, I'll be interested to know if any of the parents notice it. And that's one of the ways that I'm trying to use my platform to make a change, as much as it exists. I think only 100 people visit my website and fewer on YouTube, but I'm trying to do as much as I can with what I've got, which is why I find it so frustrating and disappointing when it takes so much longer for people that I used to really look up to do something or say something. Whatever platform you have, whether you think anyone's listening or not, make sure that you're using what voice you have to speak up for the things that matter. Are some people going to get annoyed about it? Yeah. Do they need to be the people you need watching your channel? Not really. Always be an ally. Diversify your feeds and make sure that you aren't, either through passive systems or intentional systems, ending up with a monochromatic content board. And use the platform that you have to speak up when you can. Hope this helps. I'll be linking more resources below, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.